Paul. It's Joel and Dennis from Benzinga. You are live on the show. How you doing today?
Great. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
We're doing good. Well, let's just start general market talk. Market up here at new all-time highs. Are you surprised?
I'm a little surprised. It does appear that we might, unfortunately, be getting back to this environment where bad economic news is good news for the market because everyone's so focused on when the Fed is going to raise rates, and every bit of data that seemed to suggest that, well, it's not going to be June, now the rate hike could be September, or maybe it's not going to be September, it's going to be December. That seems to be making investors happy. But when you look at what the retail sales figures were earlier this week and earnings from some prominent retailers like Kohl's and Macy's, I struggle to comprehend why people should be so bullish when there are signs that consumer spending is weak. Since last I checked, that's still the lion's share of America's gross domestic product.
Paul, we were just talking right before you came on about this alleged Avon products hoax, and I'm just curious if you were watching the news yesterday and what you were saying over there at CNNMoney when you see the stock spiking up here on this proposed bid, and then obviously this whole hoax thing. What are your thoughts here on this, Paul?
It really is astonishing on a couple of different levels. I like many other financial reporters, tried to figure out what was going on and called the firm that was listed in the SEC filing that was calling itself PTG Capital, which is not TPG. It was for a number in London. No one answered, just went straight to voicemail. Avon came out and said that there was no offer and that they couldn't verify the existence of PTG. I'm astonished that something like this can get through the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
I called the SEC and they had no comment and just referred me to their website where they talk about requirements for filings, that they don't take responsibility for what's actually filed. That something in a filing, it's the responsibility of the filer to actually make sure it's accurate. But I don't know who could have been savvy enough to actually file something that was clearly fake and have it show up in the SEC. Because there have been times where you've had fake press releases go up, but this is a fake SEC filing, which is really, really astonishing. But it just goes to show that Avon is in so much trouble that the only hope I think investors see for it is for it to get taken over.
Yeah, and Joel was talking about how Cody was potentially 3-4 years ago putting bids out there or tender offers for Avon products. Those obviously never materialized, and the stock
Avon
is just
rejected them. That's the irony. The Cody bid, which was legitimate, was $24.75 the last bid when they raised it to try to get Avon to agree. $24.75. The fake bid yesterday was only $18.75. So if Avon had only taken the real bid 3 years ago, they wouldn't have needed to be in this position.
And
for shareholders.
And I think that Warren was involved with that a little bit too. And boy, I bet you he's glad he didn't follow through on that. Well, it seems like it's old news already, but the Aol merger here being bought out with Verizon. I don't think anybody saw that coming down the pipeline. What's your thoughts of these two companies making a partnership and future implications for other companies moving forward?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I wrote about it earlier this week that it really appears that Verizon wants a bigger piece of the very lucrative digital advertising pie, especially when it comes to mobile and mobile video. And AOL, to give it credit, since it was spun off from Time Warner, my parent company, after that little AOL Time Warner merger, to put it mildly, did not pan out very well. AOL did do an admirable job under Tim Armstrong of shedding the assets that people associated with AOL. They still have dial-up subscribers, but they've morphed more into an advertising platform and a video company. They have original content. They bought Adapt TV a few years ago. They have a lot of advertising technology that Verizon clearly found intriguing. So the easy kind of knee-jerk reaction was to make fun of Verizon because they're buying a company that we all remember for spamming us in the mail with CD-ROMs every other day.
So many of those
sitting. 1994. But let's be honest, AOL is a much different company now. It's a much smaller company, and for Verizon, they're making a bet on video that if it doesn't pan out, it's only a $4.5 $1.4 billion acquisition, which is tiny for something like Verizon. You look at AT&T, they're paying almost $50 billion for DirecTV. If that deal has hiccups, that's a bigger problem for AT&T than if
Right.
Verizon and AOL don't work.
Very small deal relative to, and I think Verizon had over 11 billion just sitting there in cash too. So it wasn't like this was a huge deal here for Verizon.
Exactly.
Some of these retailers have been reporting earnings here, Paul, just switching the subject, and it's kind of been disappointing so far. We saw Macy's a couple days ago disappoint the street. Kohl's got absolutely murdered here yesterday. Nordstrom wasn't great last night. Dillard's not great here this morning or last night as well. What are your thoughts here? Some of these retailers are not really doing that well this earnings season.
It is very interesting, and I alluded to that earlier, that's one reason why I'm a little concerned that the broader market's rallying so much without good numbers from retailers. Macy's has made it really clear that the weather was obviously a problem, which I think is a legitimate excuse in the early part of the year, and the port slowdown on the West Coast was an issue. But the fact that the strong dollar is hurting international sales is something that's a problem as well. I mean, if you don't have as many tourists coming to the U.S. for some of these landmark, iconic retail brands, Tiffany alluded to that in their earnings a few weeks ago as well, that could be an issue. So the strong dollar is not just hurting the international operations of many of these big retailers abroad, but also it's limiting the number of tourists coming to the U.S. to shop here, and that's a problem. I think you have to hope that when we saw those, encouraging jobs numbers last week and wage growth is picking up, even though it's still mild, that's going to help the retailers eventually. But you do have to wonder if cheap gas in the early part of the year didn't really boost spending. What's going to happen now that gas prices have gone back up along with crude? Is that a non-issue because cheap gas was a non-issue? I don't know. That's going to remain to be seen. I hope you don't have companies blaming higher gas prices for sales weakness going forward because they weren't able to credit cheap gas prices in the first quarter. So.
Great point.
Boy, moving on, the big mover of the week now, well over $600. Netflix, I mean, I can't even tell you, $22.52 up at $609.37. Didn't even blink at the $600 level. Talks of moving into China. I mean, I don't know what other countries they're in or they could go in here. You feel this move in Netflix is, I guess it is justified because price don't lie here, but does this surprise you at all?
Netflix is a company that is just phenomenal. I love the service. I've been mystified by its valuation for pretty much ever, but I could say the same thing about Amazon. And to be honest, I've been wrong about both. It seems as if investors don't really care too much about traditional valuation metrics with a company like this that is growing so rapidly. And you have to tip your hat to Reed Hastings. He has been a phenomenal leader at Netflix. They recovered from that stumble a few years ago when they tried to rebrand the DVD business and spin that off. I really think that Netflix right now is a legitimate media company because what they've done in original content definitely really changed the game. And it used to be that you could wonder, is a Netflix subscription really worth it when you're just getting movies that are, the release schedule delayed compared to what you could get on a video on demand service from a cable company? That's no longer an issue anymore because they have so much content of their own that's worth watching, be it House of Cards, Orange is the New Black. I just started watching the first episode of Daredevil. That's very intriguing. This is just a great company, but the valuation is to put it, is very stretched right now, I guess.
Do you watch the House of Cards?
I watch House of Cards, Orange is the New Black. I mean,
when is the new season? I'm waiting. When is the next season supposed to come out? Do we have any date on that thing yet? They never tell you.
One?
House of Cards.
House of Cards, they renewed it. I would assume it's going to be in February. That's usually when that has debuted.
It's too long.
Well, you know what? That is a bit of a peculiar problem with binge watching that's unique to that. If you watch 13 episodes, I mean, again, remember, all the Netflix shows have much shorter seasons than traditional broadcast TV. So if you watch 13 episodes, even if you're not insane enough to watch 13 episodes in one day or a weekend, which, I'm married and have two kids, that would never happen. if you watch 13 episodes over a period of 2 weeks, then you have to wait 11 months for the next season. So
My wife and I were able to polish it off on 1 week, the 13 episodes, and we do have a new baby too. So
there you
we
go.
still were able to figure it out somehow. So we were addicts.
I'm the exact opposite. Going to the third season. Sometimes we don't even get through a full episode. Like the phone rings or there's a Tigers game on or something. So we're plotting through it, and I just asked Joe not to tell me what's going on because he plowed through it already. I just want to talk to you. I mean, the number one stock in the S&P, Apple. They really treated it poor after earnings. Now, a lot of that could have been attributed to the run up that it had into earnings. Now we're starting to come back. Uncle Carl got things going yesterday, saying that he's going to be publishing a letter here. Just give us your take on that, and the way that he uses the media and the Twitter sphere to his advantage. I'm not going to say he manipulates, but to his advantage, and then also your outlook for Apple.
Apple, it's very fascinating to see what Carl Icahn, has been doing with that stock. He clearly wants the company to use more of its cash, and I think a lot of investors do. And I think that's one reason why you're starting to see some of these weird takeover rumors. I wrote a story about that yesterday. I mean, there had been some chatter about BlackBerry, some chatter about SanDisk. I don't think either of those deals are going to happen, but clearly Apple has so much cash, and even with the dividend that they've been paying and increasing, and even with the buybacks, there are activists out there and non-activists. I think there are a lot of investors that would love to see Apple use its cash more than just having it sit in overseas accounts. But it's hard to bet against Apple right now. I mean, the iPhone 6 has been such a phenomenal success for them. The watch, I think the jury's still out on that, but as we've seen with prior Apple products, even if the watch in this iteration is not a financial success, they will probably improve it drastically in the second iteration, and there's a good chance that people will buy more Apple Watches once they work out some of the kinks. Apple is just that rare beast right now that you can still say it's a legitimate growth stock, but it's also a value stock because it's not that expensive, especially when you back out the cash. I think the one concern, and I think it's a legitimate one, is Apple now morphing into kind of a one-trick pony because so much of their success is hinging on the phone. The watch doesn't move the needle yet. The iPad is now something that is starting to get cannibalized by the bigger phone. You do have the Macs, but the Macs are never going to be a business that's so big to justify the calls for $1 trillion market value. You just have to hope that the iPhone 6s, when that comes out, continues to sell well. Then what's going to be the iPhone 7, the iPhone 8? I mean, at some point they might need a new product. Is it the car? Is it the TV?
What about Apple
We'll
TV? I
wait.
mean, Dennis and I have been. Dennis, remember when we bought all those CBS calls a while ago?
Mm-hmm.
Too bad we wouldn't have bought
I wish we
Leaps.
would have held on to
Oh
that. Yeah.
man, I know. We went. I think we even gave ourselves some time on that. I mean, you're right. With the amount of cash that they had, I mean, they could just swallow up someone like CBS. I mean, then you have a problems with content. I mean, to me, I think that's they have the audience, they have the people that are addicted to their equipment, their phones and stuff. I mean, to me, that seems like that would be the next thing to move the needle, but really nothing on the horizon for that.
Yeah, I seriously doubt that Apple would ever buy a content company. When you think of what they've done with the iTunes platform, they have made deals with all the major media companies, be
Right.
it music, be it TV and movies. Buying a content company would potentially make it a lot more difficult for them to continue doing the types of advantageous partnerships that they've had. And let's
Right.
be honest, I mean, if Apple's ever going to buy someone, it's not going to be CBS. It's going to be Disney, given the close ties between Tim Cook and Bob Iger. Obviously, Bob Iger and Steve Jobs before that, and Disney's not going to sell. Do not mistake what I just said for Apple should buy Disney. It's that if Apple were to ever buy a media company, Disney's the only one that would probably make sense. That's not going to happen. Disney's not going to sell to Apple, but it's always fun to speculate about what Apple's going to do with its cash.
Paul LaMonica, digital correspondent at CNNMoney, joining us here on Benzinga's pre-market prep. Paul, we love your input and can't wait to speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks, Paul.